Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, today we're plunging into something it's sparked debate and wonder for centuries.
Yeah.
Reincarnation.
Right.
Our mission for you today is to really pull back the layers on this idea. We're exploring it not just as, a spiritual belief, but through the surprising lens of scientific investigation, ancient biblical interpretation, and we're also going to tackle some of the most common Christian objections head on.
Yeah, directly.
Get ready for some truly unexpected facts and maybe some fresh perspectives from the sources we've pulled together.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how these seemingly disparate fields, you've got science, ancient texts, modern theology, how they might actually converge.
Converge, yeah.
Creating a more coherent, maybe a more holistic understanding than you might initially imagine. We're looking to connect these dots, in a way that provides a fresh look at this pretty profound topic.
All right, let's jump right into something that might sound, counterintuitive to many when we talk about reincarnation, the scientific angle. And it all really begins with the groundbreaking work of Dr. Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia.
Indeed. Dr. Stevenson, a psychiatrist, he truly pioneered this field. His foundational book, 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation, published way back in 1966. That was just the start.
Just the start.
Yeah. Over his career, he and his team forensically, scientifically, investigated more than 2,500 cases that, frankly, strongly suggest reincarnation.
2,500. That's a lot.
It is. And after he passed away, Dr. Jim Tucker has continued this incredibly rigorous research, really carrying on Stevenson's legacy.
Okay, that's a remarkable number of cases. As we were digging into the material, what is it about these specific cases, especially the ones involving young kids, that makes them so compelling, so hard to just dismiss?
Well, it's the specificity that's truly striking.
Specificity?
Yeah, we're talking about very young children spontaneously recalling incredibly precise details about a previous life.
Like what kind of details?
Names of people they apparently knew, the places they lived, even the exact manner of their death sometimes. And the crucial part is, these details were later confirmed. Verified by third-party investigators who had absolutely no prior knowledge of the child or the claimed past life.
Okay, so independent verification.
Exactly.
All right.
And in some instances, get this, physical marks or birth defects on the child even corresponded to wounds or injuries from the deceased person's life.
Okay, hold on. An unknown energy akin to dark matter, enabling consciousness transfer and even physical marks. I mean, it sounds pretty out there.
It does.
But it's the conceptual framework emerging from this actual research. When you first encountered this idea in the sources, did it give you pause or?
Oh, it certainly sparks immense curiosity. I mean, the idea that there could be some as yet undiscovered energy or medium.
Yeah.
Something capable of transferring consciousness and maybe even physical imprints from one body to another at birth.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely challenges our conventional understanding of biology and consciousness, doesn't it?
It really does.
It sort of opens up a whole new realm of scientific inquiry.
And it's not just stuck in academic journals either. We found that journalist Tom Schroeder, who used to be an editor at the Washington Post,
Right.
He took his own deep dive into this work, documented his findings in his book, Old Souls. And that really helped bring the academic rigor of Stevenson's research into a more mainstream conversation. It lent further weight to its legitimacy.
Absolutely. And what's particularly noteworthy, I think, is how this body of scientific evidence, as unconventional as it might seem on the surface, finds these surprising echoes within spiritual teachings.
It goes.
Yeah, particularly in some reinterpretations of the Bible itself. It suggests a fascinating resonance there.
That brings us perfectly to the biblical side of things then, because, most people don't automatically think reincarnation when they think of the modern Christian Bible.
No, definitely not as a central theme today.
But our sources reveal several passages that suggest the concept was actually quite known, maybe even accepted, back in biblical times.
Indeed. I mean, just consider the numerous references to Elijah's return.
Okay, look.
You find them in Malachi, the last book of the Old Testament, and then it pops up again later in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, John.
Right.
The early believers might very well have understood these passages not as, a single literal return of the exact same physical person, but maybe as a soul returning in a new body, perhaps even as John the Baptist, which was a common association.
Interesting. And then there's that really profound, almost cryptic interaction between Nicodemus the Pharisee and Jesus in John chapter 3.
Oh, yeah.
Nicodemus asks, how can a man be born when he is old? And Jesus' response talks about being born again, but suggests something deeper, a spiritual rebirth.
Exactly. What do the sources say about how that conversation might have been understood in this context?
Well, this passage is seen as pretty pivotal.
Mm,
Nicodemus is clearly thinking physically, right? How can I climb back into the womb?
right, literally.
But Jesus' response about being born of water and the Spirit, it goes much deeper. Our sources suggest this could refer to a spiritual rebirth that might unfold over time, maybe even across multiple lifetimes.
Over time.
Yeah, it implies a journey of spiritual refinement where a soul undergoes successive transformations until it truly becomes born again in that profound spiritual sense.
That's a very different reading than the standard one.
It is, and this opens up some truly mind-bending reinterpretations, like the literal ages assigned to Old Testament figures.
Oh, right, like Adam living over 900 years.
Exactly. Genesis 5.5 says Adam lived 930 years. Modern genetics certainly doesn't support a single literal human lifespan of that length. So what could this mean from the perspective of our sources?
Well, it's a fascinating puzzle, isn't it? Our sources propose that these incredible lifespans could maybe represent cumulative earthly experiences.
Cumulative, across multiple lives.
Across multiple incarnations, yes. When you view it that way, it remarkably seems to align biblical chronology with scientific and archaeological timelines in a way that makes sense of these otherwise, frankly, unexplainable figures.
Okay, and the sources even bring in some compelling historical context for this, like the eruption of the volcano on Santorini or Thera,
Back in 1646 BC, yeah.
believed to have caused the famine that drove Jacob and his family down to Egypt. That dates Jacob's death around 1627 BC.
Uh-huh.
Meanwhile, archaeological evidence places Abraham's life much earlier, around the 22nd century BC.
Big gaps there.
Exactly. For these timelines to make sense, especially with what looked like unexplained generational gaps in these ancient narratives, how does reincarnation offer a logical explanation?
Well, it potentially provides a more cohesive narrative. If we consider these long lifespans or maybe the gaps between known events as periods between incarnations or perhaps the sum total of multiple lives,
Then the timeline works better.
then the biblical narrative gains a new kind of temporal logic, arguably. It could explain how these profound figures might have accumulated the wisdom and experience attributed to them, not necessarily in one single unbroken physical life, but through a continuous journey of the soul across various earthly stays.
Okay, let's stick with Jacob for a second. This is a profound puzzle from the sources. How do we reconcile the, let's be honest, the cunning, deceptive young Jacob
Tricking his brother, yeah.
with the spiritually transformed Jacob Israel, the patriarch we see later? Our sources propose a pretty remarkable answer. What if these aren't just two phases of one physical life?
But two distinct incarnations of the same soul.
Exactly. The scripture, read this way, becomes a narrative of the soul's epic journey through multiple lives, constantly seeking that divine refinement.
Absolutely. And the text itself might even hint at this. Genesis 28, where Jacob has that dream of a ladder reaching to heaven.
Jacob's ladder, yeah.
Could that symbolize not just a vision, but perhaps a death and a spiritual transformation, a sort of pause between lives where the soul interacts directly with the divine?
A pause between lives.
And what about those 400 missing years mentioned in connection with Jacob's lineage later on? They might just represent this very process reincarnation and divine refinement. Periods unaccounted for in linear time, but crucial for spiritual growth.
Okay. So we've looked at the science, which is surprising in itself, and these really different biblical interpretations. Now, what happens when we confront this whole idea with the common objections, the pushback that Christians often raise against reincarnation?
Right. The elephant in the room.
Let's address it directly. What's probably the most frequent objection you encounter in the sources?
Well, one of the most frequent and certainly a significant one is, okay, what was the point of Jesus dying on the cross if people could just keep coming back?
That's a big one. How do the sources address that?
Here's a truly profound insight we found. Early Christian teachings, particularly something called apokatastasis.
Apokatastasis.
Yeah, or the restoration of all things. These teachings suggest Jesus' mission was actually grander than just a one-time fix for individual personal sins.
Grander how?
It was about reconciling all of creation with God, implying an ongoing universal process. This view recontextualizes reincarnation, maybe not as an escape from Jesus' sacrifice, but as a potential path within God's vast, continuous plan of restoration.
So part of the bigger plan, not instead of it.
Exactly. And the sources note this was a teaching that was later suppressed, particularly by the Roman Empire, arguably for specific political reasons, favoring doctrines like eternal damnation, which served control better.
Okay, that definitely recontextualizes a lot. Another common concern we saw is, well, if people have more than one chance, they can just live however they want, right? This idea of a spiritual free pass.
Right. The moral hazard argument.
How do our sources address that?
Well, the material we examined indicates this argument fundamentally misunderstands the philosophical underpinnings of traditions like Buddhism and Hinduism, which actually embrace reincarnation. These traditions are built upon extremely strong ethical frameworks. They really emphasize karmic consequences, cause and effect.
So actions still matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Reincarnation in these contexts isn't a free pass at all. It's seen as a profound process of learning, growth, and accountability across lifetimes. No major religion we explored promotes moral irresponsibility just because there might be successive lives. Quite the opposite, in fact.
Okay, that makes sense. And finally, a very direct and often strongly felt assertion. Reincarnation is simply a lie from Satan. That one hits particularly hard for many with traditional Christian beliefs.
It does, and it often stems from a very rigid, very literal interpretation of Hebrews 9:27. It is appointed unto man once to die, but after this the judgment.
Right, once to die. Seems pretty clear.
On the surface, yes. But our sources offer a potentially deeper reading. What if death here doesn't just mean biological end?
What else could it mean?
What about spiritual separation from God? A kind of spiritual death. Think about Jesus' words in Matthew 8:22. Let the dead bury their dead. He likely wasn't just talking about corpses there, right? Dead can refer to those who are spiritually unaware or disconnected.
Okay.
So in this context, reincarnation could offer a cycle of spiritual deaths and rebirths, a continuous journey of learning and growth, allowing a soul to repeatedly strive towards reconciliation with God after those moments of spiritual disconnection, those deaths.
So multiple spiritual deaths and rebirths, not just one biological one.
Potentially. And here's an interesting counterpoint the sources raise. If reincarnation were truly some sort of deception, you might expect believers to be more reckless with their lives, right? Less concerned about consequences.
Yeah, you might think that.
Yet, often the opposite seems true. Many who believe in reincarnation seem to live with increased mindfulness and moral purpose, driven precisely by the understanding of ongoing consequences and the opportunities for growth over lifetimes. Maybe more so than someone relying on, say, a blind faith in guaranteed salvation without personal growth.
That's a provocative thought.
It is. So if we try to connect all this to the bigger picture, the possibility of reincarnation, as presented through the scientific investigation, readings of ancient scripture, and maybe just intuitive logic.
Yeah.
It offers a truly compelling framework.
A framework for understanding what?
For understanding human development, maybe divine justice, and this profound idea of spiritual evolution.
And what's so powerful about this perspective, what our sources ended up calling the gift of reincarnation, is that it doesn't necessarily have to undermine Christian faith at all.
Right. It's not an either.
In fact, it might even enrich it, helping to reconcile what sometimes feel like these very separate ideas from science, from scripture, and from the deepest mysteries of existence itself.
Which really raises an important question, I think, for you, the listener, to consider.
Okay.
How might understanding reincarnation, or at least considering its possibility, deepen your personal faith? Your sense of God's mercy, His justice, His enduring love. It really invites you to reflect on your own journey of growth and understanding, doesn't it?